Welcome to ACOP Ministry Mind Leadership Podcast, where we talk to leaders across our fellowship with the purpose of building connection and engagement. I'm Kim Cooper, your host and ACOP Next Gen Catalyst. Join with me each episode to hear stories that will challenge and encourage you in your ministry journey. Well, welcome to our Ministry Mind Leadership Podcast. Today, I am so grateful and honored that I get to welcome my dear friend, Jori Stockdale. Hi, Jori.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's an honor and a privilege. Jori and I have been friends for years, and I'm so excited to get to hear a little bit more from you and for people to get to know you a little bit more, Jori.
I'm excited to do this. It's not my favorite thing to do. I'm actually quite shy, as shockingly as people don't believe me when I say that, but I would do this for you, Kim.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so for those of you that don't know Jori, tell us a little bit about you. Where do you live? What do you like to do? Tell us about Jori.
Okay. Well, I live in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I've actually lived there since I was 11 years old. I never planned to stay in Regina. I actually always thought I would be moving away, so got out different plans, but I live there. I love spending time with friends, coffee dates, that kind of thing. I love to travel. Like, this has been painful because I think it's been like 8 years now. I have like this friend group and we go to Mexico every year, and that's not happening this year. So yeah, I love to do that. Love to read. I have 3 nephews that I adore and love to spend time with them. Really close with my family as well, and we all live in Regina. So it's a little about myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, this pandemic has been hard on so many.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
was supposed to go to Mexico for the first time during.
Oh no. Well, when you go, you're gonna love it.
Okay, well, later. Let's
Yes.
hope at some point we can all travel again. So, Jori, tell us where you work, where you serve, what you do for ministry.
Oh, sure. I am at Regina Apostolic Church, and I am the next gen pastor at the church there. And so, for clarity's sake, because some people don't understand what that means, I oversee 0 or birth to 18 and parent ministry. So
Yeah.
that's my role at the church.
Cool.
And I have been on staff, not in that current role, but on staff for about 17 years now. 17.
Whoa.
I've been on staff that long, and I did my internship at the app before that and served.
Yeah.
So let's just say at 20 plus, and let's just cap the number at that.
Okay, so you made mention that you kind of started in one area and it's morphed. Tell me a bit about how, like, where you started and how that's kind of changed over the years. Positive. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so I started in youth ministry. And I started actually myself and another guy, we both started in youth ministry together. After a couple of years, it was clear he felt called into another area, so I took over youth ministry myself. I did that for I think about 9 or 10 years, just youth ministry. And then there was a shift that happened in our church. Our children's pastors resigned, and for a year they wanted me to like oversee both. And in that time, sort of stumbled across this new concept. It's not that new anymore, but a new concept of having like an overarching vision for children's and youth ministry and families. And, some people call it family ministry, some people call it next gen ministry. And so sort of stepped into that role as that's, so that would be even 6-7 years ago, kind of about now. But then I still currently run the youth ministry right now. So oversee both. Yeah.
Transitions and changes and being flexible and going with the flow and
Yeah, we've been in a series of transitions at the church. So once the large picture transition changes, then I'm sure there'll be some other adjustments in all those departments and ministries. So, but yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now.
So you said like 17 to 20 years. Now, like that is not very common to hear about ministry leaders, pastors, especially in youth ministry, kids ministry, to last that long, especially in one church.
Yeah.
So, what do you think you would say kind of was the factor in your longevity?
Hmm. There's a couple things, but I'd say the primary thing is calling. Um, I knew when I started at the church that God called me to go there. In fact, I was actually on my way overseas, was the plan. And then it was just this clear voice that, no, you're called to stay and do youth ministry.
Wow.
You're in youth ministry for a season, just youth ministry. Although obviously, like everyone, other things in the church, right? Like no one just does one area. And then actually Ken Parker came to our church and he spoke a prophetic word over my life and just talking about my leadership expanding and things like that. And I can't remember, I need to go back and listen to the prophetic word, but I can't remember all what it was. But as he was speaking about prophetically about my leadership expanding, God spoke to my heart and said, youth and kids. And at that point, I wouldn't say that I had a passion for kids necessarily, focused primarily on youth. And so then it was a clear switch of calling again, right? Like, or an expanding of my calling. Is that maybe more to put it that way? And that hasn't changed. So that would be a clear, I'd say that's the main one. And then I love youth.
Right.
Like I love youth. Like, I mean, I love overseeing everything. I value pouring into the little 3 and 4-year-olds, but my heart has always and probably will always have some tie into youth ministry, right? Like regardless of where God moves me, I love them.
Yeah.
So I think I would be one of those people that if I wasn't on staff, I would be that youth, like I'd be a youth leader. Like I would still be doing youth ministry.
Because your education, you're actually a nurse.
Well, yes, I took nursing in
Right.
preparation to go on the mission field.
Yeah. Wow. And so there was a huge, let's use the key term for this season, there was a huge pivot in your life.
Yes. Yeah. Because I mean, I served as a youth leader, right, in the church. I loved it, but I didn't see a lot of female youth pastors.
Yeah.
The idea that females would be in youth ministry wasn't really common 20 years ago.
No.
Not in a, even today, even now, I was on a youth call. I don't know, a national youth call, just a youth leaders call a week ago. And I looked around and I was like, 1, 2, 3, I think I see 5 women on this call. Like I was so excited that there was other women. I don't know, maybe 20, well, 25.
Wow. So that's still pretty low.
Still pretty low.
Some with you now.
Some with.
What I hear you saying is that, first of all, it was calling.
Yeah.
If you feel called, it's easier. Like if that calling is super clear and you've had confirmation as well, it's much easier to endure those hard seasons and stick it out.
Yes.
Secondly, when you love what you do.
Exactly. Like, I mean, it's funny how there's lots of things about ministry, writing the reports, filling out the, like handing in the receipts, like all these things. If I could just have a coffee with a student and just do that every day, and that's heartbeat stuff.
Okay.
Right?
That leads perfectly into my next question for you.
Yeah.
What are you passionate about? What gets you out of bed each morning and makes you excited to do what you do?
I I love I love seeing students, specifically students, but it can be anyone, like as like in age bracket. I'm saying I love when I see them have this moment of like a shift in their faith, like whatever that moment is. Do you know what I mean? Like you're talking to a student and they're telling you like God answered prayer in this way, or like those moments, or like here's an example. I did a delivery to a family home. We did some visiting in pandemic season. So I went and took some stuff, and this home happened to have like elementary kids in it and one little preschooler kid in it. And I was dropping it off, and the girl was really shy. And because I'm mostly doing in student ministry, like my hands-on, even though I oversee, I don't know a lot of the younger kids really well. And their mom's like, oh, she doesn't know how to talk to you right now because you're in her TV and you tell her about Jesus.
You're a celebrity.
But it was that moment of like seeing that this girl like is like learning about Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Like it was an exciting moment. Like and they said she loves watching her Sunday school lessons. She loves, and you're just like, so those are the moments. Yeah. Do you know? Yeah. That's the fruit moments, you know?
You kind of brought up how ministries looked a little different right now. So what do you see some of the current challenges that we're facing in student ministry right now?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few challenges. I think that there has been, this always sounds like you're going to go the negative side. So, but that's okay because these are challenges. I think apathy has come in. Mm-hmm. It's been long for them. And so I think kids having to sort of disciple themselves, and to be honest, apathy in families, like in parents, like just
they're tired too.
They're tired, right? And I mean, someone was saying too, like at this point, people that are engaging in online church life is half of what it used to be. And so I think there's that apathy, there's that danger of it. I think a big one, I think this is actually to me the biggest one, Kim, that more discipleship is happening by the culture than us. Right. Our culture is discipling our kids.
That's a scary thought, isn't it?
It's a really scary thought. And there's so many things that are out there, so many statements that are out there, that it's like, it actually sounds really good. It's like 95%, but it's that 5% lie that's just destructive, right?
Yeah.
And that's really concerning to me. And that's happening before they're in student ministry. So, and that's what I think why I see that whole idea of that vision of, as churches, if we can get that vision of like, not departments, but holistically seeing like, youth graduate on fire for Jesus. Like it starts in the nursery. Do you know what I mean? Like it starts at a young age. And so if we can get that vision that this isn't just the youth pastor job in grade 11 or 12, but this is a holistic parent church partnership from birth, discipleship.
Well, yeah. And actually the next question I had for you was, what are some areas maybe or strategies or priority shifts that need to happen for ministry leaders as they're considering and visioning for next gen ministry? So you kind of touched a bit on that. Can you elaborate on some of those shifts that you think might be beneficial for those of us that are working in next gen?
Right. Well, I think one of the things is as like leaders in our church, pastors, elders, board, Like, you have to catch the vision that this isn't an additional ministry. This should be a priority. This should be a heartbeat of your church. Whether, and you put funds where you have heartbeat. You put resources, you put time, you put volunteers, where there's heartbeat. And so this needs to be a heartbeat of the church. It needs to not be the responsibility only of the few. So what I mean by that is, like, when we see it, like, some people will see it, well, that's the youth pastor's job, or that's the children's pastor's job, or no, like, the church needs to believe in that holistically, right? Like, we're pouring into the next generation. And that needs to be a vital part of our vision. I really believe that. Like, it has to be key to it.
Definitely. And we've seen that faith in a family can be gone in one generation. It just takes one generation where it's not the priority.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the kids see that that's not the priority, and poof.
Yes.
Faith is out of that family.
Yeah.
I really love what you said. It's not the responsibility of the few. And I know Greg and myself, I don't know where we had seen this study, but level of importance in a student's life.
Yeah.
Youth pastor is like way down.
Like it's for faith formation, for faith, it's dad, then mom, although they're like basically the same. And then grandparents and friends or grandparents. I can't remember which way it comes. And then you, like, it's down further, like 7th or 8th.
Yeah. Because I think even like senior pastor, like there's teachers in there somewhere, but yeah, I think it was kind of a blow to us as youth pastors at that point to go, whoa, wait a minute. So in some ways I was like, that can't be. But then when I thought about it more, I was like, yeah, that totally is. And yet so many times when we see kids struggling, or when we talk about what needs to happen, a lot of times the responsibility is, well, the youth pastor isn't doing this, or the children's pastor isn't doing that. But it starts in the home. Yes. And so I'm hearing you say that we need to support our families.
Yeah.
And we need to shift to being about the kids, because the reason we call it next generation is that if this doesn't succeed, if we don't teach our kids and the word of God and help them to form their faith in Jesus Christ, now we won't have a church.
Exactly. Well, and the reality is, no, there was always that push, right? That people left their faith after high school. But as research came out, they're actually making that decision at 10 and 11 years old. And that's why that's why I really believe in the idea of this overarching partnership. Have one vision for the church as a whole, still have active kids ministry, active youth ministry that's separate, but have an overarching strategy, because it's the transition stages that are difficult. And there's these blurry lines, and we need to walk together in it. And also, Kim, with that, I don't know about you, I found, especially when I was first doing youth ministry, I was intimidated by parents. I didn't know how to help parents, or the idea that I would actually be pouring into them was crazy. And yet it's critical that we're actually helping parents learn how to disciple kids too, right? And like, when I talk about the culture being the ones that are discipling them, parents need to know what's happening in the culture. Like, we need to be people that are, helping be their advocate and letting them know what's happening in the culture, and providing resources and tools. And it's really difficult to do all of that.
Yeah.
And so that's why, an arm of Next Gen or family ministry or whatever, there needs to be that arm of how are we helping the parents, because they are the primary discipler. They are the ones doing the most. How are we helping them, right? Without losing the idea that we still need to reach kids that don't have that at home. Like,
Right, because that's a reality.
absolutely a reality. And we need to have the both. We have to have both. We have to have the vision for both.
Yeah, absolutely. So you would say that that is probably what you would say is that's the vital, important piece, partnering with families, and having that overarching, the whole body working together, making this one of the big pillars in our churches, in order to see faith passed to the next generation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask you, what was or what is, maybe you have a couple things, but over the years, what would you say was the most impactful piece of advice you got being in ministry?
That's interesting. I have different ones for different seasons. Can I share a couple?
Yes, you definitely can.
So I would say, like, one of the ones at first was the opposite of it. So someone told me when I first started that it was better to ask for forgiveness than permission. That's the worst advice. Like in my do the work.
Right.
This do the work to have the equity to be able to get the permission.
Right.
Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
because honestly, it's just actually usually a little bit more work to get the permission. And sometimes we're just a little too lazy to do it. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a little work. Explain why. Why do you want to do it? Yeah. And so anyways, that's one of the things that I always think it's funny.
What you're saying is do the work and make the case.
Yes, exactly.
Proposal.
Right. And do the work. And because then as time goes on, you won't have to get permission as often.
Right.
They'll believe in you. They'll see your heart. They'll trust you. Right.
I love that idea of relational equity.
Yes.
You have to put in, you have to build the trust. You have to do the deposits into the bank before you can do the withdrawals. And I think that's a super important thing for our next generation, for those young leaders. Hear me now, people, that as you are looking even to find your place in ministry, you have got to find places where you are building that equity.
Absolutely.
Your development, in your ministry. And when people see that you are willing to do whatever it takes to build the trust and the equity, and that you're putting deposits in, soon you will be given the responsibility to start making some of the withdrawals.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Here's the other thing that I would say. This is similar to the whole building equity. This isn't advice. This is what I've seen modeled. Two former lead pastors that are, obviously everyone would know these, not everyone, but they're well-known people in ACOP. Merv Switzer, Pastor Switzer, and Rick Parkin, Pastor Parkin. Both of these men modeled servant leadership.
Right.
Like they would do the jobs that people didn't want them to do, that didn't want to do it. They served. Like, I mean, and I've seen Pastor Switzer. He was my pastor before on staff. And then I worked with Pastor Rick. And I've seen both of them serve. Pastor Switzer primarily now, right, as just a lay pastor. But man, the heart of a servant. And Pastor Rick, people wouldn't have seen that about him, but he modeled servanthood. Like he was, so I don't know, watching leaders that don't need to serve, quote unquote, recognize that you serve because that's what Christ has called us to do.
Right.
It's huge as a leader, right? So that was one. That's not a piece of advice. That's just seeing it. Like, you have to be a servant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Any other pieces of advice?
You're not going to please everyone.
Right.
So consider what you're supposed to do. Like, know what God's leading you to do versus trying to please them.
Yeah.
And that one's tough on me, Kim, because I want people to be my friend. I want people to like me.
Yeah.
But that's critical. Like, you can't please them. And when you're trying to please man, often you're going to actually make a decision that isn't the best decision for the ministry.
Right. Right.
So,
okay. So, this podcast is for everyone, but with my role as Next Gen Catalyst, I am looking at young leaders. That is my key demographic that I want to help them to find their place in ministry, to feel valued and heard. And there's a lot of times we hear, well, there's not space for me at the table, or you know I went and I got my degree, but now I can't seem to find a ministry position. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot because I didn't prepare you for this question. But what would you tell someone right now? And I know that you have a young staff. You have, because you're over the whole Next Gen ministry in a large church, you have staff that come and work with you. You have interns, you have a lot of young people that you work with. Tell me, what are you looking for, or what advice would you give to a next gen leader, someone coming, someone trying to find their place? What would you say you are looking for, or what kind of advice would you give that type of leader right now?
oh, wow, that's an interesting one.
Put me on the spot.
No, it's good. I would say serve where you're passionate. Like, don't start looking for a position necessarily, but dive in and start serving where you're passionate.
Yeah.
And I think people are looking for people that they see they're already serving somewhere, right? They want to see that they actually love that ministry, that that they're involved in that, right? So, even if an 18-year-old is coming to work on staff for a summer position, I want to know, like, so did you spend the year helping in kids ministry? Were you a youth leader? Like, do you have, or if it's missions, if it's whatever, are you on street leaders every summer? Like, are you serving in areas that you're passionate, right? And then the other thing is humility, like being willing to be taught and learn and grow, because honestly, you need that your entire ministry life, right?
Yes.
So, like, knowing that they're willing to be taught, knowing that you desire to be shaped to become more like Christ, and the positions are secondary. That's vital.
Secondary, yeah, because a lot of times there aren't positions until you've served. Like, I know for us, we served voluntarily for years and years and years before we ever had actual open doors for positions other than summer internships and that sort of.
And I'd say too, Kim, like, an open door, if there might be a door that opens that's not the door you want right away. That doesn't mean, though, that's not the door you're supposed to go in. Like, I think about our worship pastor, an example, Pastor Matt. He would be a younger leader. Like, he started on church as a pastor in our church. I think he would have been like 24, 23.
Okay.
So as a worship pastor, and that's a huge department in our church. Maybe I'm wrong. He might have been a little bit older than that, but mid-20s. But he came on staff actually as part of our administration staff. He finished his internship at the church as a worship intern, and he came on staff and worked as our worship pastor's assistant administration department for a couple of years. And was that maybe his heart passion? No, but it was a door that was opened, and he felt like God asked him to walk through that, right? And so
to do it, you know, because I think we talked about call being like paramount to help you get through the hard times. At the same time, sometimes there's you can know your call, but sometimes there's some steps that you need to, and a lot of times it takes a lot longer to get where God's like shown you this picture or this idea of where he's got for you. Great, that's wonderful, but sometimes it takes a lot longer than you anticipate.
Well, and there's also the mini calls. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's those moments of like, okay, I'm supposed to walk through this opportunity. And maybe that opportunity is only 3-4 years. Maybe you think it is, and you step into it and it's like me, and it's, like 17 years later, right? You don't know. So you have to follow his leading, even in those small opportunities, or what you would perceive as small opportunities.
Yeah. Faithfulness, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's those small things. And that is good. So last question. Are there any resources that you have stumbled across in the last couple of years that have been really beneficial to you that you would like to share?
Well, I mean, I appreciate an organization called Ministry Boost. They have training for leaders. So they have children's pastor training, like children's ministry, youth ministry, family ministry, next gen ministry. All of that is part one of that. So as it relates to just for ministry people, I really have appreciated taking courses from them. Coaching, like that's not a resource, but can I just say, like, find a coach, do some coaching. That's huge. I'm in a coaching group that's out of the States. I think it's always great. Try to get someone that's serving in a level that's above, that has higher experience, that can coach. And then there's some, what I like to do is look at what's coming out in youth ministry that's new. And see what's new that's coming out. And there's this new book that just came out. Let me see if I can find the name of it really quickly. And it's about what's happening with our generation right now with anxiety. So this would be like an up-to-date new one. And so let me just see if I can pull it up on my Kindle here to see if I can find it. So Generation Z Unfiltered is what it's called. Facing 9 hidden challenges of the most anxious population. And it's just, so I found it really fascinating. I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. And it's talking about what's happening to Generation Z, which is both children and youth. And what they're facing right now, like what's happening. And what are some strategies, what are some thoughts that we have to combat that. And it actually is great for parents as well. Like that wouldn't be just for youth workers or pastors. But
that's great. Awesome. Excellent. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jori. It's been a fun morning. Well, I hope that it's been good for our listeners and encouraging. How can they, if someone has a question or someone wants to get into contact with you, how can they do that?
Well, 2 easy ways. You can call the church that I work at, and it's a super easy phone number. So it's 306-789-1234.
And that's the Regina Apostolic Church.
Church. Or you can email me, Pastor Jori, Jori @reginaapp.com. So any of those ways, and I'd be more than happy to chat with people and talk to them and answer any questions that they'd have, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.